Vineyard.
We are Vineyard.
We had an experience years ago where somebody came in. We were doing some work in our basement. We were creating a separate entrance for an apartment just because of all the hosting that we do in our house. We had a great setup for that. And so they tore down all the drywall and they looked at the actual foundation of our house. And it was because our neighborhood, when they were building our homes, backfilled the foundations too quickly. And so they didn't allow for the curing process to happen. And so all this...
Like pretty much our whole neighborhood.
Our entire neighborhood. I think that there was even like class action lawsuits around it. Oh, and we had watched somebody having to dig out like all around their foundation. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars. We want to do some work on our basement foundation. And they're like, there's some significant things that we need to do to be able to rebrace your foundation. We need to bring in structural engineers. We need to put these special screws in here and, bring in a beam and whatever. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, this is awful.
This is a lot.
I remember thinking, do we need to sell our home?
Right.
And they said, no. If you invest right now in this foundation, you'll be able to have your outdoor entrance of whatever you need and want. And I remember this guy saying to me very specifically, he's like, your house will stand for another 100 years. Like, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to have to repair some of the cracks that you see, which that's, aesthetic. He's like, but the foundation is going to be strong and it's going to be able to hold. I'm like, okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that since then, where there is a great opportunity for us, a way of thinking about your life, a pretty proactive way of looking at your life and the ministry that's coming at you, your family, your marriage, where you just always are attentive to those foundational aspects of your life, recognizing that there's just certain things that you're going to have to do.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. In today's episode, Jay Pathak will be interviewing Danielle Pathak, Vineyard USA's Associate National Director for Pastoral Health and Formation. Let's listen in.
All right, Danielle, here we are. We Are Vineyard, episode 875,000. I don't even know how many. It feels like it's a lot.
It's never ending.
Yeah, we were joking this morning that we are. It seems like we're part-time podcasters at this point, which is kind of fun. We've been on a couple podcasts this week, you and me.
I know. It's been fun.
Yeah, it is kind of fun. And in this one, we're following up out of Steve Machia's podcast, which is nice.
It's so good.
It was so good.
I hope it's helpful for people.
Yeah, you got a lot of feedbacks of folks that knew Steve and knew you from back in the day. And yeah, good guy. Well, just felt like we could talk to him for hours and hours. But
I know.
We only got that little bit of time. Hopefully there'll be more. And so in this series, we're doing is following up with different folks on team and just hearing what they've learned, what the years have been like in this role, and then thinking about just following up or setting up the different podcasts, the work we're doing with the Vineyard as a whole. And so, first of all, just with the time with Steve, is there anything you want to reflect on or say?
He's a wise soul. I mean,
Yeah, he's been a gift to you.
He's been a real gift to me. We meet regularly, and he is one of those people that are described as a non-anxious presence, at least for me, he is. And we just need more of those. We really do. He feels very fatherly, very wise.
Yeah.
The work that he's done around discernment actually has served me in my own life, and this ministry work that I've been doing, it's been serving me like greatly. So I really, really appreciate him. And it's really interesting having somebody outside the system or outside of my normal orbit of people. It's been very, very nice to have somebody objective to meet with, to reflect back, what he's seeing and that sort of thing. So it's been great. We need more people that step into that type of gifting, I believe, in our churches and in the Vineyard as a whole. So, and I look forward to that. I think it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate him and things he had to say about finding health as a leader. And these are things that you have to keep working on, trying to figure out how do you get below the line, not just doing all the work we do above the line of our mind and our schedules but how do you get to what's going on in your heart and what's happening in your life? And so let's talk about that a little bit more today. Just what you're learning. You've been getting to know a lot of groups outside of the Vineyard, even like you've been on little trips, some with the Lilly Grant work, but also with different institutions. What are some of the different things you've gotten to be a part of that is sort of outside the Vineyard? You're learning about the work people are doing out there.
Well, I had a very meaningful time last fall where several organizations came together in Lake Tahoe. Actually, it was very beautiful. It was my first time there. And we came together to share the work that we have been doing in our own organizations around pastoral health. And first of all, it was amazing to hear about all the different types of work and all the unique kind of creative things that people are doing. We are not the only ones. There are people that are working very passionately and very fervently towards helping ministry leaders and clergy live in healthy ways and be able to handle the stresses and the different responsibilities that are coming at them. So that was really encouraging for me. And it's always stimulating to be around people that are doing things maybe in a different type of way, or they're maybe in a denomination that's a bit different, so they have different restrictions or different freedoms. So that was really fun. I took some of my team with me and we had a great time. But one of the things that was presented at that retreat, because there was a little bit of content and then obviously a lot of kind of enjoying the beauty of the place that we were in, but one of the different presentations that was given was from Boston University, from a professor and psychologist named Steve Sandage. Look him up. He is so interesting. And he presented some data and some real results from some studies that they're doing on clergy. And it really provoked me to do a much deeper dive into what was happening. Because I had known some of the more general things that were coming out, through an organization like Barna, and I think a lot of ministry leaders are paying attention to that type of data that's coming out, especially in the last few years. But Boston University was identifying very, very specific reasons why pastors were growing weary in ministry. And so that was being presented. We did a lot of work around narcissism, which was so interesting. Like how is that kind of leaking into leadership and or in our churches? And it was really, really, really interesting. I took notes as fast as I could. But some of the things that were being identified felt very validating just out of my own experience and then watching other people. But yet what was interesting is that just to be validated in that, these specific reasons of dealing with people or I shouldn't say dealing with people, but interacting with people and leading with people, and kind of caught in this, a very emotional, relational world, these things are leading to a weariness. It doesn't necessarily solve the weariness. Does that make sense? Like it was identifying a lot of different things. I mean, for instance, relational aggression was one of the things that we talked about there, that people are speaking to each other in such a way and or hurting each other in a way with the way that they communicate that is hard for leaders. I mean, we can see this, every time we log into the news and or,
just
like,
conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Persistent
behavior.
conflict.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which I'm like, yeah. That actually makes sense. I mean, that resonates with a lot of my experience, or watching people describe how painful that is. Things like triangulation, being in the midst of people that maybe have an issue with each other. And then as a leader, you're kind of put in it, or maybe you jump right in there. And how oftentimes people don't have the tools or the skills to be able to manage that type of relational tension.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of different reasons, actually. And so, again, it felt very validating, where I'm like, this is actually really helpful for pastors to be able to recognize that the weariness is coming at you in a lot of different ways, and in you. There's a lot of different, I don't know, maybe different currents that are kind of running in you, or different kind of tripwires that are running in you. But again, even leaving that, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's more information, that's helpful, but what's our responsibility for leading leaders, training leaders in being able to look at and focus in and do some significant work trying to get some tools and some more training, I guess, maybe around how to untangle from some of these different things.
Yeah. Well, and what I think makes the conversation you're having difficult, the one that they're talking about, is there's tools that you can learn on the outside of you, and there's tools you have to learn on the inside of you. So if you're carrying around a lot of anxiety or stress or frustration or hurt or insecurity, it's one thing to learn some tools to, okay, how do I orchestrate this conversation, or how do I make sure we validate or reflect what people are hearing, or create a pathway or a plan on how to change behavior for this conflictual pattern or whatever. That's all external stuff. But if the leaders themselves are carrying those pressures and burdens, either from their family of origin, the very old story of their own life, or those things accumulate. So they stack up on each other. So now you're in 4 or 5 of these on a church staff or something like that. So there's a lot of tools needed there, a lot of inner work. And, we, for our last leadership meeting, brought in Ken and Sandy to try to help us think a bit about peacemaking and reconciliation and forgiveness. But we've also been doing a lot of work. We had started with our church in Denver with Emotionally Focused. And I know that keeps spanning out. We're getting more and more pastors and leaders doing some of that work. Talk a little bit about how that continues to go forward, or what's important about that. Why, if I'm listening, should I think about this thing we have, this process called Emotionally Focused?
Well, I mean, to go back to the origins of that type of work, I think that you and I and our team in Denver recognized as we were speaking and teaching people and really emphasizing discipleship in our church, it felt as if we wanted to expand and or address different ways that people were formed.
Yeah, and the emotional processes of that.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And acknowledging, we were really good at sitting with people and hearing their stories and asking them about how they were raised and what were the different patterns and what were the different values that they wanted to take from their family of origin, and what were the different things that they needed healing from and or to leave behind. We were good at that. We would oftentimes end up in very messy situations, but it felt like a huge honor to be able to sit with people.
Yeah, it's pastoring.
It's pastoring, exactly.
Yeah,
it's messy. Right. It's really beautiful and messy at the same time. So we wanted a discipleship track and or process that involved a lot of different emphasis into it. Not only just how are you growing with your life in your life with Jesus, but how did your first formation, which would be how you grew up, those first 20, maybe 25 years, how did that influence you in thinking about your spiritual formation? How do you plan on growing in your emotional and kind of spiritual life? So for us, when we came across content in its first form, when we came across content that felt as if it was addressing all of those different things in one, we grabbed that and we started working our leaders through that, our staff through that content. And part of the work, it wasn't just, actually, you and I have talked about probably one of the most significant kind of ways that it gets communicated is through a coaching process. Like, it's not just sitting in a class and learning about it.
The information is accessible. You could read any number of 10 books to give you good thoughts on emotional process and first formation and spiritual disciplines that help you ground that in the scriptures. There's all kinds of great resources. It's sort of like everyone has probably right now has a plan or knows that they should have a plan on how to be healthier with their body, let's say. Like,
yes,
how could I get stronger or faster or healthier, manage this problem with my stomach, or fix this crink I have in my neck, or whatever. But people just don't do it. like you need a coach. You need someone to walk you through it and help hold you accountable and manage the different kind of bumps that come up in the road. You know, we all have an avoidance of pain or insecurity. We don't want to do stuff that makes us feel weird or bad or that we don't know what's going to happen next. Uncertainty. So to have a coach that can just be like, all right, let's talk about how to re-engage this conversation with your family or with this one friend or that coworker. So it's taking that material and trying to run it through some coaching networks for 6 months, which is a long time, but it actually ends up feeling like a really short time.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you're 3 weeks in and you're like, oh my goodness, like I need.
Yeah. Well, and
I need a lot more help.
There's a lot of good tools out there. I mean, some people have done this work in therapy, which is not as accessible as you wish it would be. And it's costly, costs a lot of money. This was a way that we could help a lot of people get some of these tools, get in coaching, and then build a different kind of culture in church. And yet, you and I were talking about this the other day, even that, there's no magic, is there? I mean,
magic.
The fact that you have tools
doesn't mean you're using
doesn't
them.
mean you're using them. And so,
I mean, look at our garage. We have so many tools. I have no idea how to use them.
Careful.
No. I'm saying for me, I don't know how to use them. Like, I look at them and I'm like, that would be cool one day. I don't know. One day if I learn it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we've seen the experience of the people who have every possible tool available to them. And pain is a funny thing. We have load limits, either the pain or the pressure of life, things go wrong, and or the sort of busyness and the overwhelmed nature of life can make it so that we revert to old patterns to just to try to get something done or to try to protect ourselves or to try to get somebody to do something we need them to do. We can go back to out of that urgency, that pressure of either ministry or, trying to make sure something gets accomplished so that I can feel better. So, even the tools themselves are only as useful as you're using them. And yet, a lot of folks just don't have those tools or haven't built a culture within their church or their friendships of learning how to do that stuff. And so when you think about that and what we've been trying to build, well, just give us a little bit of an update. Like what is happening with the Vineyard? So if I'm listening right now and I'm like, yeah, I'm realizing I keep ending up in the same pattern of anger, or I keep ending up in the same kind of relational conflicts and I don't know what to do about it. Or, I have this persistent pattern, maybe even with my family of origin, like I've cut them off or I don't know how to repair that. What do we have that's available? What can people opt into?
Well, we have a lot of different opportunities for people to take part if they want to.
Oh, wait, one more thing to say about that. And then I want to hear, because here's why this is important.
Yes.
If we're going to try to lead other people and we're not tending to this stuff in ourselves, that's going to end badly. It's going to end badly for us. It's going to end badly for the people that we're leading. And I don't know. I think our experience is you have to keep doing work. I mean, no matter how much you've done, there's some new wrinkle, either a stage of life issue or something going on in the life of your church or frankly, just in the world at large. I mean, in the world at large, it seems as though maybe the number one skill we could learn as followers of Jesus is to be reconcilers, to be able to disagree and yet still love people well, and yet hold firm to your convictions. Those sound simple in sentences, but we're not seeing that in social media. We're not seeing that families are falling apart because of political problems. So we can't lead effectively in our churches or in our workplaces or in our families if we're not doing some of that work ourselves. So it's really, really important.
Well, and I was thinking about, through different conversations that we've had about this, I was thinking about, what was that statement? Was it Martin Luther that you had said the other day, that he said on a normal day?
If I have a busy day, I'll pray for an hour. If I have a really busy day, I'll pray for 2.
Right.
And so the idea is the more that happens, the more, the more pressure or responsibility or opportunity or authority, the more work you have to do on yourself, not the other way around.
Right.
So sometimes we think of the other way around, like, oh, once I get this done, well, then I just kind of did that. And now I just take on more and more in my life because I have this resiliency that's been built on the inside, when it's actually the other way around. That continues to be tested in greater and greater measure if God trusts you with more and more, or more and more things show up in your life as a result of doing your life. So,
well, I can feel that actually, especially in this last season, this last few years of time. I resonate with that statement from Martin Luther, because I'm like, there is something about having to be a lot more intentional. Like the weight and the pressure is showing more vulnerabilities, maybe a little bit more cracks, which is completely fine. I mean, that's just what happens. Like we had an experience years ago where somebody came in, we were doing some work in our basement, and we were creating a separate entrance for an apartment just because of all the hosting that we do in our house. We had a great setup for that. And so they tore down all the drywall and they looked at the actual foundation of our house. Now, what was interesting is that they didn't know, the people that came in to do, the professionals that came in to do that work, didn't know that I had been in other neighbors' houses where it was much worse than our home, but I had walked in and I'd seen all these cracks on their main floor, like really significant cracks. It was actually kind of strange. And it was because our neighborhood, when they were building our homes, backfilled the foundations too quickly. And so they didn't allow for the curing process to happen. And so all this...
Like pretty much our whole neighborhood.
Our entire neighborhood. I think that there was even like class action lawsuits around it that we were finding out about because our soil is so heavy and it's clay.
Well, and if it wasn't the foundations that cracked, it was the main sewer lines.
Yes.
Were dropping and cracking. Yeah, exactly.
So, and we had watched somebody having to dig out like all around their foundation. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars. So we want to do some work on our basement foundation. And they're like, oh my goodness, like there's some significant things that we need to do to be able to rebrace your foundation. Yeah. We need to bring in structural engineers. We need to put these special screws in here and, bring in a beam and whatever. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is awful.
This is a lot.
I remember thinking, do we need to sell our home?
Right.
And they said, no. If you invest right now in this foundation, you'll be able to have your outdoor entrance of whatever you need and want. And I remember this guy saying to me very specifically, he's like, your house will stand for another 100 years. Like you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to have to repair some of the cracks that you see, which that's, aesthetic. He's like, but the foundation is going to be strong and it's going to be able to hold. I'm like, okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that since then, where there is a great opportunity for us at different moments in our life, if not having a way of thinking about our life, like just what we were speaking about, a way of thinking about your life, where you have a mindset and or like a pretty proactive way of looking at your life and the ministry that's coming at you, your family, your marriage, where you just always are attentive to those foundational aspects of your life, recognizing that there's just certain things that you're going to have to do.
This summer, Vineyard USA is hosting our national conference, Melody and Harmony, in 2 locations, Denver, Colorado on June 16th through 19th, and Cincinnati, Ohio on July 14th through 17th. We hope that by offering 2 locations and dates, everyone, pastors, leaders, volunteers, even those just curious about the Vineyard, that everyone will be able to find a time to join us. The conference will also have specific programming for adults, youth, and kids. As far as our theme, throughout history, the Lord has been composing a beautiful melody through the story of his people and his church. And for the past 50 years, the Vineyard movement has had the privilege of adding its own unique harmony to this grand symphony. Registration is now open, so make sure to check out vineyardusa.org to learn more and register today.
But what's hard about that, Dee,
What?
is we don't know they're there.
We don't know that they're there.
So there are ways that we are avoidant, but we're often avoidant not to the fundamental problems, but the symptoms, right? Think about why I feel that, this pattern appears in my life. So that's the symptom. we don't even want to do that. Or we want to address the symptom really basically, like, I just need a nap, or I need a vacation, and sometimes that is all you need. I need to just eat better. I need to start working out. And by the way, those are all important things. But what sometimes you realize is, no, it's way more fundamental than that. Like what you're describing, like, how do you figure out your foundations now? Well, I mean, for us, we were trying to do this major project that revealed it. But it's hard to notice that. Instead, you're just like, I don't know, there's this...
You're patching the cracks.
Crack in the wall.
Exactly.
I just got to patch it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not even just that you're ignoring it. You don't even know it's there. You're not even aware of what's going on. And that's why, I remember talking with many people who know Jim Harrington about some of this years and years ago, because he was like, I was trying to think through how to do some of this work for me, let alone for other people. And I was like, I don't know, Jim, do I really want to do all of this? It's a long process. And he was like, yeah, you're right, man. I don't know. You do a lot of work. Maybe you don't need to. I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, maybe I won't. And he was like, but here's the thing. Like, if you do some of this work and there's nothing there, like, you just wasted a little bit of your time, I guess. But it's possible, Jay, there's more going on under the surface than you're aware of. And if you start to do some of that work, it will save you a ton of pain later. Or you can just wait till later when a whole bunch of stuff shows up and call me then. We could work on it then. But that means between now and then, you're going to be, having a hard time yourself or with other people. And I thought, that's a pretty good argument.
Well, and that's why a crisis gets people's attention, right?
It is. But what's hard is then you're dealing with the crisis.
I know.
Plus whatever's being revealed.
It's extra.
So
Yes.
it's like, okay, so the fact that my dad is dying is a lot of work itself, let's say. But then it's revealing all these other things going on. Well, how do I get access to that while I'm dealing with the fact my kid might be an addict, or the fact that our church has a financial crisis and I'm not sure how to lead through this? And it's revealing all my own performance issues or tendencies towards catastrophizing or whatever, right? Like, this other thing appears that I can't really get access to because I'm having to do this other work first. So, in a strange way, it's often best to try to do some of this work, this sort of looking below the waterline work, when things are going well.
Yep.
I mean, ironically, like, if you really want to build a long-term growth plan for your life and really the capacity you have to lead or just live well, forget about lead. It's best to do that when things seem to be working, not the other way around, it's not intuitive. That's not an intuitive thought. At least for me, it's not. Because if things are going well, man, they're going well. Let's keep making hay while the sun's shining, to use the old business adage, right? Like, let's keep going. Actually, it's the other way around. If you could you might have a little more energy to do some of that foundation work when you have the ability to do it. But that's a hard sell.
It is a hard sell. And I think that, even when we recommend for people to have time away, just to emphasize a point that you just said, to have time away, like, it's great to actually be by yourself every so often. Like, this is a very important thing. Like, we live in a culture that's filled with people and noise and talking and all the things, like, it's good and healthy to be away by yourself in silence and solitude. Most people don't do that because the moment that they get quiet or they remove themselves from their family and their friends and all their community, they get themselves in a little cabin in the mountains or a hotel room or whatever. There is so much underneath the surface. There's so much noise in them, in them. And there is so many negative things that they're negative emotions, negative things that they feel or that pop up to the surface. It's really overwhelming, really, really overwhelming. And so usually people are like, forget this. Like, I'm out of here. Like, this is awful. I have no idea why anybody would recommend something like this.
Right.
I've had that experience. I remember having that like a couple times even last year where I'm like, I know this is important and I have this in my rhythms.
But I feel worse.
I feel so anxious right now.
Right.
I've cut like times short because I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is so bad. But we know that through our own experiences that if you can just push through and let that stuff move through you, and or if you can spend long enough, then you actually can get to places of genuine stillness.
Yeah.
And or places where the Lord, at least you can recognize that the Lord is there. He's never left you. Like he's there. He can meet you in the midst of all of this stuff that feels very, very uncomfortable, if not kind of repelling actually to many people, actually to most of us, goodness gracious. Like, why do we want to sit in negative emotions? But there's something coming through that is really precious if we can just sit in there. So, yeah, I just want to emphasize that. So you had asked the question, like, how do we get access? How do we get access to some of these tools? And again, there is a lot of stuff out there. I mean, it's been really encouraging in this last bit of time to see how many people are offering some really great spaces for people that involve the coaching, involve the material. So even with Emotionally Focused, we believe in it, and we recognize that maybe it isn't for everybody. That's completely fine. But the way that it is structured, just so people know the practicalities of it and how to get involved, but the way that it's structured and the way that we're managing that in a VUSA, like a Vineyard USA kind of world, would be that you start with an intensive. We used to call it retreat. I think that's a little tricky to call it a retreat.
Yeah.
It really is an intensive. It's 2 days with 5 different sessions in person, or we've made it available online, which is, it's always a bit different to do things online, but it works. It's okay. Like you're not sometimes near somebody in person that's doing an intensive unless you want to get in a car or on a plane, but you have this experience that starts off everything. 5 different sessions. Why don't you describe what some of these 5 different sessions and the way that it looks like? Why don't you describe that real quick? Because we've been doing it for so long, and you've done a lot of teaching around that.
Yeah, I mean it keeps adapting. So every so often we review what's working, what's not working. So basically, it's 5 sessions that follow a predictable pattern of some teaching, some solitude, usually some large group coaching. So in the room, we'll process with somebody, plus small group time. The thing that people are mostly shocked by at the end is how much solitude time. People are blown away at like, wow, this is like a lot of being by myself. Well, it's probably more than
most people have.
Well, yeah, it's hours like and hours and hours.
In years, yeah.
And so they're like, wow, and because it's focused solitude time. So out of this talk where you're being asked to consider integrity, for example, and that you want to be a certain kind of person, but you're not that kind of person. And you have things in your mind that you try to set yourself up for that you can't seem to deliver on with your will or in your relationships. Why? So how do we process that? So you'll process a lot of that, and then you're in small group and then back in a large group where you might have a few people that process that. So what it really does is help excavate a lot of what's been going on under the surface. And usually out of the 5 sessions, it's 1 or 2 that really land, because we're kind of coming at the same kinds of questions through really 5 different doors. And you start to recognize maybe personal commitments you made along the way. I made a commitment to protect myself in this way, or I made a vow that I'm never going to let someone ... So it's a self-protective kinds of things, and or commitments to show up and try to control the world in such a way so that I won't ever be heard or won't ever be embarrassed or left behind or ignored. So, because sin affects us all, it just affects us all in different ways. So in a very real way, what we're trying to figure out is, why isn't the gospel being applied to our lives in a way that's offering the real hope of transformation? Because it's true that there's nothing we can do to make God love us more. There's nothing we can do to make God love us less. And if we can live out of that, we experience a different way of being beloved, a child, a son, a daughter, that's loved completely, fully. And then we are able to be in this thing called a church and love one another. But there's limitations, and it's because we have unique ways that we've been hurt or broken, or we sin. So it really is just trying to apply the hope of the gospel to us in the unique ways that we get distorted along the way, deformed so that we can get reformed. And it turns out just coming to Jesus doesn't instantly change you. It's the Pete Scazzero quote, which, by the way, I would highly recommend their work. Scazzero's quote is that you might have Jesus in your heart, but Grandpa's still in your bones. So you've been patterned in certain ways through generations that need to be reformed in the way of Jesus. And that, again, is pretty awkward work. It's sort of like, it's one thing to know I've got a pain in my abdomen. Like, I don't know, something in my stomach. And we'll say generally, my stomach hurts. It's another thing to do a blood test, to get a scan, just notice, oh no, there is like a cyst in this one part of my belly, or this one organ must not be functioning the right way. Or
even to know your family history, right?
But it's doing that examination,
yeah.
And then it's a whole nother thing to do a scope. We're going to run a scope in there and figure out what's going on. I mean, so those layers of analysis require a lot of vulnerability, a lot of intentionality. Experts, people that you trust, who are kind of doing this with you, and or some level of accountability. I mean, the amount of people that are avoiding the doctor right now, with some that, we all have a story of the family member, the friend that had cancer but was afraid to go get checked. So that's in the physical, but also in the spiritual or in the relational. Like, something's going on here. Let's just blow it off, or I bet I just need a vacation or whatever. It takes work to get under the waterline and look at that. And so a lot of this EF work is trying to get under the waterline, specifically the intensive, is trying to start to uncover that. But that only uncovers it. Now,
what do you do?
Now I have a scan. Yeah. I need now a process to begin to get some healing or repattern that behavior. And that's what the 6 months is for.
Exactly. So you basically take the content from the intensive plus more, and you slow everything down. And then for the next 6 months, you are examining it through the presentation of different pieces of the material over, every other week. And then you have a coach, an actual coach that you meet with another kind of person or two.
Yeah, because it's helpful to hear other people's process too. You learn as you watch them processing.
And it can feel kind of strange. I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday where they are in a small group doing this process with other people, and they were curious and are wondering, like, why do I have to do this with another human being? Like, I don't relate to this person. I don't. And I'm like, just wait. Like, just wait. I get it that it feels strange for a moment to observe somebody else, and or you can watch your tendencies to kind of want to take on somebody else's story. Just resist that.
Yes.
And everything in your being, just resist that for a moment, because there is something very important to be, the observation of watching somebody through their own story and having them learn from your own story. But you're not responsible in any way for that person's progress.
Yes.
But it's really important for you to do it with another person in your group or another two people in your group. So the 6 month coaching is key. We emphasize that all the time. We love that. We just usually say that that's probably where most of the work's going to happen. And that just having somebody follow up with you, like, you made this commitment.
Just small amounts of accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You made this commitment. You had this big breakthrough, and or you've really been thinking about this one concept of differentiation. I mean, like that, I remember that concept blew me out of the water over the 6 months. I think my entire 6 month process was worth it to think and to consider and to work on differentiation, because I had never, ever thought about that in my life. I grew up in a pretty enmeshed family where lots of love, lots of care, lots of good intention, and lots of people. Like, we would just always be getting together and, doing that sort of thing. But the differentiation piece of, like, who am I? What am I called to be able to do in this world?
The tendency toward fusion.
Exactly.
Meaning,
towards fusion.
I don't
connection.
know what I feel in light of your feelings. So
a lot of powerful feelings in my family.
Or I can't feel okay if you're not feeling okay, because we're connected in a certain way. That's fusion. Like, I don't know where I end and you begin. So if I'm feeling good and you're feeling bad, I'm not allowed to feel good.
Yes.
Or if you're feeling good and I'm feeling bad, I'm feel bad. Worse, that you feel good somehow.
Yeah, totally.
And yet not to be completely cut off. So strangely, the tendency of fusion is to cut off. So I can't manage the intensity of this. So I just completely cut off. I'm gone. So strangely, it's that in between. How do I be where I'm at and stay connected? And I don't need to change you. What you are doesn't necessarily have to change me. But then how do we remain connected? That is like, I mean, that's really hard in a emotional system like a family and again, this is where it's really helpful if you're a pastor or a church. And, Friedman would make his argument that this is what leadership is. Leaders are able to lead out of principles regardless of the emotional field that they're in. And part of what they're supposed to be is a non-anxious presence in such a way that piece reframes the entire system. That the system now can learn how to be differentiated in that same way. And sadly, a lot of leaders lead with anxiety. I'm just going to create intensity or stress or fear or performance as a mechanism of getting things done. And strangely, that will bond people together. They'll suddenly be connected, maybe even doing things that appear missional or, really spiritual. Like there's a way to stir up activity out of anxiety, whether it's prayer or mission or Bible study or whatever, serving the poor, that isn't grounded in the sort of securing love of God. And that's because the leader themselves has learned, out of their own anxiety, has learned to just do stuff to try to be important. So,
and attracted people around him or her
who want to do that.
Who want to do the same thing.
Yeah, and in a strange way, it kind of bonds you. It makes you feel connected. So that little 1 Corinthians 13 text is in the middle of how gifts and the church functions. And the idea that I can give everything I have to the poor and have not love, and that's nothing. Or I can speak in the tongues of angels and have not love, and I'm just a resounding gong. And so it seems as though what Paul's saying is what's driving the way the church works underneath. And we're not going to be able to lead our churches in how to do that effectively if we aren't doing that our own work within our own families, our marriages, with our kids. So, yeah, I think it's essential work. And again, there's a lot of ways to get to this. We have these sets of tools with EF, and a lot of people will step in EF, and it might not be the right set of tools for them. Maybe they have a lot of accumulated trauma and they need more
one-on-one
intentional work. Mm-hmm. Or they do the work and it's the right work, but they realize, man, there's a few really difficult sticking points. Or there's one thing that came up in the 6 months or in the 10 weeks that follow, which we didn't even talk about, which is focused mostly on family of origin, that I need more work on. So that was good, but it wasn't quite enough. I need to specialize maybe in another process or in a different way. And so, yeah, it's a good starting point for a lot of folks. If you haven't read all the emotionally healthy everything from Scazzaro, emotionally healthy discipleship, emotionally healthy leadership, those are
it's
great tools, really good.
And we run that in our own church. Like we love it. We think
Yeah.
it's a great companion and complementary to the work that we're doing with Emotionally Focused.
Yes.
So,
and we've built some good friendships
yep.
with them as well.
Well, let me talk about just real specifically before we move on about a pastor-only cohort that we're providing.
Okay, yeah.
Because we do have most of the intensives, and then the 6-month formation is for anybody. Like anybody that wants to be a part of it, whether they are a leader and or serving in a different in a context in a church community. Anybody can be a part of it, and you will see all of our different options online. Mm-hmm. Again, whether it be in person or an online experience. So that's great. And I also felt burdened to provide a space just for pastors. And that's been something new that we're trying on. We just started that a couple weeks ago. It's housed under our Lilly grant, which kind of meets some of our requirements for what we committed to them. And this pastor-only cohort, which not just lead pastors, but pastor, like a vineyard pastor, we are emphasizing this unique role that we all have chosen to take on of leadership. We're emphasizing that a little bit more. But yeah, at the same time, we are providing a safe space for people to be able to work through their own stories. So I'm excited about that. The one thing that I am doing a little bit different in the pastor-only cohort is that we are requiring, and it just is part of the requirement of the cohort, if they're going to commit to something like that, we're going to do a retreat about halfway through the 6-month coaching.
Which is different than what we've
It's a
normally
little
done.
different from the way that it's normally set up. And the reason why is because in the last year, I would say specifically in the last year, some of these cohorts that we're running through pastoral health and formation in the Vineyard that some of my team is taking on, we are dropping retreats, like a really intentional few-day in-person retreat in the midst of these cohort. And this real intentional work that people are doing, whether it be in their physical health or spiritual health. And the retreat space is one of the most kind of positive forms of feedback, or the kind of aspects of feedback that we're getting back about these cohorts and the work that people are doing. And I think it's because we don't oftentimes take the time for ourselves to just step outside of our own kind of busy life and be able to get into a beautiful environment, to rest, to receive prayer, to be able to process some of the work that we're doing. I'm excited. I love every time that I see a different retreat coming up for the cohorts. We're just praying a lot over this retreat space because there's something really incredible that happens out of that. So we've dropped it in the pastor-only cohort. I'm excited because specifically with the work of emotional health, it's tiring work. I mean, this is, we keep talking about, we're like, okay, like this is like you got to stay motivated and it's kind of tiring to do this type of work. So we want to provide a space where not only people are getting prayer, but we can really encourage our pastors and our leaders. Like, this is really significant. The Lord is doing something. How can we encourage you? Because to be motivated by encouragement is pretty powerful.
Yes, I agree. That's good. Well, what else do you think is important? I mean, we didn't talk about the next thing, which is the 10 weeks towards family of origin, or we also have a missional component to this. There's all kinds of little bits. So I don't know. I don't know how much we want to.
Well, if people are interested, I mean, we just want to provide different ways for people to keep learning and growing. I mean, the thing that I feel like would be worth a further conversation would be to explore a little bit more of the systems work that we are doing. Because right now what we're talking about is work that's important for any individual to do, but has great implications with the systems that you are a part of, right? So we keep kind of, talking about families, but I would love to do a bit of a deeper dive into the way that this can affect systems. So, yeah.
You want to do that now?
No, that's okay. We can do that later.
Oh, I didn't know.
I'll just do a little bookmark. Bring me back. Bring me back. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. Or get somebody else that's like a lot more gifted and trained and does this sort of work. But I think that the systems work really is very, very interesting. And ultimately, I mean, even in the emotionally focused work that we're doing, you're providing these intensives and this coaching and that sort of thing. My desire would be that people, or let me just say our hope would be that people don't just do their own work and then it just kind of stays their own work, that they look at their staff culture and their leadership culture, their board culture, their elder culture, their church culture, and they figure out ways to bring this type of work out of the overflow of what's happening in their life, in their own life, in the impact and in the results that they're seeing in their own life, that they can just bring that to the people around them. Amen. So that they get more people on their team and they get more people, understanding the values of what they're trying to do in their leadership. So that would be my hope, because I think that that's really what's going to help church health. It's what's going to help our leadership culture. So,
well, healthy leaders make for healthy churches or staffs, and then healthy churches. And then healthy churches are what actually make a difference in the world. And so if you want a quick primer, I mean, if you've never read Generation to Generation, that's Friedman's book, That book is really challenging. I find it very challenging because it basically is describing how whatever dysfunction you bring into leadership or your sort of the role that you were used to playing in your family of origin, number one, you will make your own family mirror that. And then you'll also build churches and communities that mirror that. So those dysfunctions and those strengths, that's a pretty powerful book for observation to kind of get you outside of your own head and go, what is going on here? Especially if you're noticing patterns in your own leadership style. It can really help you. So it's a great primer. It's a good place to start, I think. And then of course we love Steve Cuss's work. If people haven't looked
Capable
into
Life.
that. Yep. We think he's doing really good stuff. Been a friend a long time.
Yeah. So we'll link all that stuff in the notes if you want to keep learning, reading, that sort of thing. And then feel free if you want to reach out to me and or look on the website. The Vineyard USA website has all of this information on there, and we keep it fairly actually very updated on the dates and the times of the different intensives and or formation, which would be the 6-month coaching process. Coming out of that, we have all the different options on there, and we're going to keep making it available in the next season. We're going to keep doing a lot. What I mean by that, not available, but we're going to provide a lot of different options and ways. We're working with churches that we are considering kind of hub churches all around the United States, and we'll hopefully keep strengthening our hub churches so that they can do a lot of this work with us as well. So it's not just one person on my team doing it, but we have different places throughout the country.
Yes. And this also, we haven't talked at all about the spiritual direction world. I mean, we have multiple words, so it's worth looking into all the different things that you're building and financial cohorts and physical health cohorts. We got all kinds of things. So I agree. Yeah, it's good. It's all very important work under the line, under the water line.
It's really fun.
Yeah. Well,
it's mattering.
Yep. Grateful for your work, Dee, and hopefully people will take a peek at all this stuff. It's a good kind of continuation from Steve's thoughts. Like, how do you continue to do this internal work so you can do it for a long time? And I think we've seen enough examples of leaders blowing themselves up and how that shrapnel affects the people around them. So the work required to do that. So thanks.
Thank you.
As we celebrate our 50-year anniversary in the Vineyard, if you're interested in learning more about Vineyard history, there are plenty of resources for you. Check out our show notes for links to books, YouTube videos, and more to learn about Vineyard history and identity. And make sure to keep listening to the podcast this year for stories of Vineyard churches throughout the year.